In the autumn of 1987, the dense forests of Oregon's Cascade Range were experiencing one of their most spectacular fall color displays in decades. The ancient Douglas firs and bigleaf maples created a canopy of gold, amber, and crimson that attracted photographers from across the Pacific Northwest. Among the most dedicated was Rebecca Ann Sterling, a 31-year-old professional nature photographer from Portland, whose work had been featured in National Geographic, Outdoor Photography, and numerous regional publications. Rebecca had built her reputation over 7 years of meticulous fieldwork, specializing in capturing the intimate details of Pacific Northwest ecosystems. Her photographs revealed the hidden beauty of moss-covered fallen logs, morning dew on spiderwebs, and the interplay of light filtering through old-growth forest canopies. She was known among her peers for her patience and willingness to spend days in remote locations waiting for perfect lighting conditions. Born and raised in Eugene, Oregon, Rebecca had developed her love for wilderness photography during college at the University of Oregon, where she studied both fine arts and environmental science. This dual background gave her work a scientific precision that complemented her artistic vision. She understood forest ecology well enough to predict where interesting subjects might be found, and possessed the technical skills to capture them with professional quality. Her daily routine during solo photography expeditions followed patterns developed through years of experience. She would wake before dawn, reviewing topographical maps and weather forecasts while drinking coffee from a thermos. Her equipment was organized with military precision: multiple camera bodies, various lenses, tripods, filters, and extensive lighting equipment, all packed in custom cases designed to protect delicate instruments during long hikes through challenging terrain. Rebecca's personal life was closely intertwined with her professional work. She lived alone in a converted warehouse space in Portland's Pearl District, with one section serving as her darkroom and another as a gallery where she displayed her favorite prints. Friends described her as intensely focused on her craft, sometimes disappearing into the wilderness for weeks at a time, emerging with rolls of film that would become the foundation for her next exhibition or magazine submission. Her relationship with technology reflected the era's limitations and her own preferences for traditional photographic methods. She worked exclusively with film cameras, primarily medium format systems, that produced higher quality images than 35mm, but required more careful handling and planning. Unlike many photographers who were beginning to experiment with early digital technologies, Rebecca remained committed to chemical processing and darkroom techniques. Rebecca's choice of equipment was both practical and artistic. She preferred Mamiya and Hasselblad medium format cameras for their superior image quality and the distinctive look they produced in her forest photography. Her technical knowledge extended to understanding how different film stocks responded to the filtered light conditions found beneath forest canopies, often carrying multiple types of film to capture the subtle color variations that made her work distinctive. The darkroom in her Portland studio was equipped with professional-grade enlargers and color processing equipment that she had accumulated over years of careful investment. She processed all her own film and made her own prints, maintaining complete control over the artistic process from capture to final image. This hands-on approach was time-consuming, but allowed her to achieve the exact visual effects she envisioned during her fieldwork. The financial realities of freelance nature photography in the 1980s meant Rebecca supplemented her artistic work with commercial assignments. She photographed for tourism boards, environmental organizations, and outdoor equipment companies, using the steady income to fund her more ambitious personal projects. Her business records showed she was particularly busy in the fall of 1987, with several major assignments scheduled throughout October and November. Rebecca's approach to wilderness safety was thorough, but reflected the practices of her era. She carried topographical maps, a compass, first aid supplies, and emergency food, but had no GPS devices, satellite communicators, or cell phones. Her safety protocol involved leaving detailed itineraries with her business partner and friend, Margaret Chen, who managed the administrative aspects of Rebecca's photography business from an office in downtown Portland. The partnership between Rebecca and Margaret had developed over 3 years of successful collaboration. Margaret handled client communications, scheduling, and the business side of photography, while Rebecca focused entirely on the creative and technical aspects of their work. They spoke regularly when Rebecca was in the field, with scheduled check-ins every few days using payphones or ranger stations when available. Rebecca's expertise in wilderness survival came from years of solo camping and hiking throughout the Pacific Northwest. She was an experienced outdoorswoman who understood weather patterns, carried appropriate gear for extended stays in remote locations, and had successfully navigated challenging situations during previous photography expeditions. Friends and colleagues considered her one of the most prepared and safety-conscious photographers working in the region. Her wilderness skills had been developed through formal training as well as practical experience. She had completed advanced first aid courses, wilderness survival workshops, and orienteering classes offered by outdoor education organizations in Oregon. Rebecca understood how to read topographical maps, use a compass for navigation, and recognize signs of changing weather conditions that could create dangerous situations. The photography community in Portland during the 1980s was relatively small and close-knit, with professionals regularly sharing information about promising locations and techniques. Rebecca was known for her generosity in helping younger photographers develop their skills, often mentoring recent graduates from art schools and providing guidance on both technical and business aspects of nature photography. Her reputation extended beyond Oregon, with photography magazines regularly featuring her work and outdoor equipment companies seeking her endorsement for products designed for wilderness photographers. This recognition had allowed her to command higher fees for her commercial work, providing the financial stability necessary to pursue more ambitious personal projects in remote locations. If you enjoy real mysteries like this one, please subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any cases. On the morning of October 12, 1987, Rebecca Sterling loaded her pickup truck with photography equipment and supplies for what she planned to be a 5-day expedition in the Mount Hood National Forest. Her destination was a remote area near the Salmon-Huckleberry Wilderness, where she hoped to capture images of old-growth forest transitioning into its autumn colors. The specific location Rebecca had chosen was accessible only by hiking several miles from the nearest Forest Service road. She had discovered the area during a previous scouting trip and believed it contained photographic opportunities that had never been properly documented. Her notes, later found in her Portland studio, described cathedral-like groves of ancient trees with perfect understory lighting. Rebecca's truck was found 3 days later in a small pullout along Forest Service Road 4260, exactly where she had indicated it would be parked according to the itinerary she had left with Margaret Chen. The vehicle was locked and showed no signs of disturbance, with Rebecca's personal belongings secured inside and a note on the dashboard indicating her expected return date of October 17th. Forest Service personnel who discovered the truck noted that Rebecca's camping gear was missing, consistent with her stated plan to establish a base camp in the wilderness area. However, the truck's location was more remote than many photographers typically chose, requiring a challenging hike through unmarked terrain to reach the areas Rebecca had described in her itinerary. Margaret Chen contacted authorities on October 18th when Rebecca failed to return as scheduled and could not be reached by phone. Chen's concern was immediate and intense, as Rebecca had never missed a scheduled check-in or deviated from her stated plans without communication. The two women had worked together long enough that Chen could accurately assess when Rebecca's absence indicated a genuine emergency. The initial search effort began on October 19th, coordinated by the Clackamas County Sheriff's Office, in cooperation with Forest Service personnel. The search area encompassed approximately 30 square miles of dense forest, steep terrain, and numerous small creeks and valleys where a person could easily become lost or injured. Search teams faced significant challenges due to the remote location and difficult terrain. The area Rebecca had planned to photograph was accessible only on foot, with no established trails and numerous natural obstacles including fallen trees, steep ravines, and areas of thick undergrowth that limited visibility to just a few yards in any direction. The autumn weather in 1987 was particularly challenging for search operations. Early season storms had brought heavy rain and occasional snow to higher elevations, creating muddy conditions that made tracking difficult and raising serious concerns about Rebecca's survival if she was injured or lost without adequate shelter. After 5 days of intensive searching involving over 60 volunteers, search teams discovered what appeared to be Rebecca's base camp in a small clearing approximately 3 miles from where her truck was parked. The camp showed signs of organized setup, with clear evidence that Rebecca had spent at least one night there before disappearing. The campsite contained Rebecca's tent, sleeping bag, cooking equipment, and food supplies, all arranged in the methodical manner that friends recognized as characteristic of her careful approach to wilderness camping. Notably absent were her cameras, tripods, and photography equipment, suggesting she had left the camp carrying her professional gear. More puzzling was the condition of the campsite itself. While Rebecca's personal camping equipment remained undisturbed, There were signs that someone had searched through her belongings after she left. Food containers had been opened and partially scattered, though this could have been caused by wildlife rather than human interference. The discovery of the campsite allowed search teams to focus their efforts on a smaller area, but the dense forest and steep terrain continued to hamper progress. Searchers found occasional signs of human passage, including broken branches and disturbed ground cover, but were unable to establish a clear trail or determine Rebecca's intended destination. Search efforts continued for 2 more weeks, involving specialized teams with tracking dogs and helicopter reconnaissance when weather conditions permitted. The challenging terrain and thick forest canopy made aerial searching largely ineffective, while ground teams struggled with the vast number of possible routes Rebecca might have taken from her base camp. As October ended and weather conditions deteriorated further, search coordinators made the difficult decision to scale back active operations. The consensus among experienced search and rescue personnel was that Rebecca had likely suffered some kind of accident in the remote terrain, but the vastness of the potential search area made comprehensive coverage impossible with available resources. The decision to reduce search efforts was not made lightly. Clackamas County Sheriff's Office had invested significant resources in the operation, including overtime pay for deputies, helicopter rental costs, and coordination with multiple volunteer organizations. The financial burden of maintaining intensive search operations indefinitely was unsustainable, particularly when the probability of finding Rebecca alive decreased dramatically with each passing day. Weather records from October 1987 showed that the region experienced several severe storm systems during the search period, with temperatures dropping below freezing at higher elevations and substantial rainfall throughout the area. These conditions not only hampered search efforts, but also raised serious concerns about Rebecca's survival prospects if she was injured and exposed to the elements. The psychological impact on search volunteers was also a significant factor in the decision to scale back operations. Many volunteers were fellow photographers and outdoor enthusiasts who identified strongly with Rebecca's situation, and the emotional toll of searching for someone they considered a colleague and friend was becoming increasingly difficult to manage. Rebecca's family, including her parents from Eugene and her sister from Seattle, had joined the search effort during its most intensive phase. Her father, a retired logger familiar with old-growth forests, provided valuable insights into the terrain and possible routes Rebecca might have chosen based on her photographic interests. Rebecca knew these forests better than most people, her father, William Sterling, told search coordinators. If she got into trouble, it wasn't because she made rookie mistakes. Something serious must have happened to prevent her from getting back to safety. The case attracted significant attention from the photography community, particularly in the Pacific Northwest, where Rebecca was well known and respected. Professional photographers and outdoor enthusiasts volunteered their time and expertise to help with search efforts, bringing specialized knowledge about the locations and conditions that might attract a nature photographer. Several theories emerged during the initial investigation. Some searchers believed Rebecca had suffered a hiking accident, possibly falling into one of the area's numerous steep ravines or becoming trapped under fallen timber. Others suggested she might have become disoriented in the dense forest and wandered into even more remote areas. The possibility of wildlife encounters was also considered, though experts noted that dangerous wildlife interactions were relatively rare in the area. Black bears were present but typically avoided human contact, and cougar attacks, while not impossible, were extremely uncommon during daylight hours when Rebecca would have been working. As winter approached and search conditions became increasingly difficult, the active investigation gradually transitioned to a missing person case that would remain open but receive minimal resources. Rebecca's family maintained hope and continued to organize periodic volunteer searches, but the vast wilderness area and challenging terrain made comprehensive coverage impossible. The case remained active in Forest Service records, and Rebecca's disappearance became part of safety training programs for outdoor photographers and wilderness professionals. Her story was frequently cited as an example of how even experienced outdoors people could vanish without trace in the region's dense forests. Over the following years, occasional reports of equipment or personal items found in the forest prompted renewed search efforts. But none of these discoveries proved to be connected to Rebecca's case. The Pacific Northwest's dense vegetation and frequent rainfall made it extremely difficult for evidence to remain visible for extended periods. In 1995, 8 years after Rebecca's disappearance, hikers discovered camera equipment in a remote area approximately 10 miles from her last known location. However, examination by photography experts determined the equipment was of a different brand and vintage than the cameras Rebecca had been carrying, eliminating any connection to her case. The advent of improved search technologies in the late 1990s and early 2000s prompted several renewed efforts to locate evidence of Rebecca's fate. GPS mapping systems and improved coordination between search agencies allowed for more systematic coverage of the vast search area. But these efforts failed to uncover any new evidence. Rebecca's family never stopped believing that answers existed somewhere in the Oregon wilderness. They maintained contact with law enforcement agencies, regularly submitted requests for renewed search efforts, and organized annual memorial hikes that combined remembrance activities with continued exploration of areas that had not been thoroughly examined. The family established a scholarship fund at the University of Oregon for students pursuing nature photography, ensuring that Rebecca's passion for capturing wilderness beauty would continue to inspire future generations. The scholarship program also helped maintain public awareness of her case and the ongoing efforts to determine what had happened during her final photography expedition. Margaret Chen continued to manage Rebecca's photography business for several years after her disappearance, selling prints and licensing existing images, while maintaining hope that her friend and partner would eventually return. The Portland studio became an informal gathering place for photographers and outdoor enthusiasts who shared memories of Rebecca and organized volunteer search efforts. In 2011, 24 years after Rebecca Sterling's disappearance, a discovery would finally provide concrete evidence of her fate, though it would raise as many questions as it answered about her final days in the Oregon wilderness. A group of college students from Portland State University were conducting a weekend camping trip in a remote area of the Mount Hood National Forest when they stumbled upon what appeared to be an abandoned photography setup. The discovery occurred in a location approximately 5 miles from Rebecca's original campsite, in terrain so difficult that it had never been thoroughly searched during the original investigation. What the students found was both heartbreaking and mysterious: a professional photography tripod set up beside what were clearly human skeletal remains, positioned as if someone had been photographing the forest when death occurred. The scene was so well preserved and undisturbed that it appeared almost surreal, like an art installation rather than evidence of tragedy. The students, aware of Rebecca's case through local folklore and university journalism classes, immediately contacted authorities rather than disturbing the potential crime scene. Within hours, forensic specialists and Forest Service investigators had secured the area and begun a careful examination of what appeared to be the final resting place of the missing photographer. The skeletal remains were quickly identified as belonging to Rebecca Sterling through dental records and personal items found at the scene. Her camera bag was positioned nearby, containing equipment that matched detailed inventory records maintained by Margaret Chen and confirmed by photography equipment serial numbers. But the arrangement of Rebecca's remains and equipment raised profound questions about her final hours. The tripod was set up in a professional manner, suggesting she had been actively working when whatever happened to her occurred. Her camera was still mounted on the tripod, though decades of weather exposure had rendered both the camera and any film inside completely unusable. More puzzling was the location itself. Rebecca was found in an area that would have required extremely difficult navigation to reach, involving stream crossings and steep climbs that seemed inconsistent with casual photography work. The site offered no particularly spectacular views or obvious photographic subjects that would justify the dangerous approach required to reach it. Forensic examination of the scene was complicated by the passage of over 2 decades and the effects of weather on the evidence. However, specialists were able to determine that Rebecca's remains showed no obvious signs of trauma or violence, suggesting that her death was not the result of an attack by humans or wildlife. The positioning of her body and equipment suggested she had been alive and working when death occurred, but the cause of death could not be definitively determined due to the condition of the remains. Heart attack, stroke, or other sudden medical emergency were considered the most likely explanations, though definitive conclusions were impossible after so much time. Among Rebecca's equipment, investigators found several rolls of undeveloped film that had been protected inside waterproof containers. The film had deteriorated significantly during its 24 years in the forest, but photographic specialists were able to extract partial images from some of the rolls using advanced restoration techniques. The recovered photographs provided haunting insights into Rebecca's final photography session. The images showed the forest location where she was found, captured with the artistic skill and technical precision that had made her reputation. The photographs suggested she had been working in the area for several days, taking multiple shots of the same subjects under different lighting conditions. Most significantly, the final images on the last roll of film appeared to show Rebecca herself, apparently using the camera's timer function to document her own presence in the remote location. These self-portraits, while damaged by time and weather, showed her appearing healthy and focused on her work, providing no indication of distress or awareness of impending danger. The discovery site became the focus of the most intensive forensic investigation in the case's history. Specialists spent weeks carefully excavating the area, searching for any additional evidence that might explain how Rebecca had reached such a remote location and what had caused her death there. This investigation revealed additional personal items scattered in the immediate vicinity, including Rebecca's field notes protected inside a waterproof case. The notes, written in her distinctive handwriting, documented her activities during what appeared to be several days of work in the area before her death. The notes revealed that Rebecca had discovered what she considered extraordinary photographic subjects in the remote location, describing lighting conditions and forest scenes that she believed had never been properly captured on film. Her enthusiasm for the work was evident in her detailed descriptions of planned shots and technical considerations. However, the notes also indicated that Rebecca had experienced some difficulty navigating to the location and had become somewhat disoriented during her approach. She wrote about taking longer than expected to reach her intended destination and having to modify her planned route due to unexpected terrain challenges. The final entry in Rebecca's field notes, dated what investigators believed was the day of her death, described her satisfaction with the photographs she had captured and her intention to complete one final series of shots before returning to her base camp. The entry showed no indication that she was experiencing health problems or was aware of any immediate danger. Forensic botanists who examined the discovery site determined that Rebecca's remains had been in the location for the full 24 years since her disappearance. The advanced state of decomposition was consistent with extended exposure to Pacific Northwest weather conditions, and the positioning of bones suggested that her body had not been moved or disturbed after death. The investigation team concluded that Rebecca had likely suffered a sudden medical emergency while actively engaged in photography work. The remote location and lack of communication equipment meant that even if she had survived the initial medical event, rescue would have been impossible given the distance from any traveled routes. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, a forensic pathologist who specialized in wilderness deaths, provided additional context for understanding Rebecca's case. Sudden cardiac events are not uncommon among people engaged in strenuous physical activity at elevation, Dr. Mitchell explained to investigators. The combination of hiking in difficult terrain, carrying heavy equipment, and working alone created conditions where a medical emergency could quickly become fatal. The discovery also provided insights into Rebecca's final days that helped explain some of the mysteries surrounding her disappearance. Her field notes indicated she had spent considerably more time in the wilderness than originally planned, extending her stay to take advantage of exceptional weather and lighting conditions. Rebecca's extended timeline in the wilderness was revealed through careful analysis of her field notes and the photographic evidence recovered at the scene. Her original 5-day plan had apparently stretched to at least 8 or 9 days, based on the progression of her written observations and the number of different lighting conditions documented in her photographs. The notes showed that Rebecca had become increasingly excited about the photographic opportunities she was discovering in the remote area. Her writing described finding what she called virgin forest scenes that had apparently never been photographed before, with combinations of light, shadow, and natural composition that exceeded her expectations. This excitement appeared to have overridden her normal safety protocols, leading her to venture farther from her base camp and into more challenging terrain than she would typically attempt during solo expeditions. Her field notes showed a progression from careful, methodical exploration to increasingly ambitious attempts to reach what she perceived as perfect photographic locations. The psychological analysis of Rebecca's final days suggested that she may have entered what outdoor psychologists term goal gradient effect, where proximity to achieving an important objective leads to increased risk-taking behavior. Her notes indicated she believed she was on the verge of capturing career-defining images that would justify the dangerous approach required to reach them. This extended timeline explained why search teams had been unable to locate her, despite intensive efforts. Rebecca had apparently moved much farther from her base camp than anyone had expected, reaching areas that were beyond the practical limits of the original search effort. The case was officially closed in late 2011, 24 years after Rebecca's disappearance. While questions remained about exactly how she had reached such a remote location and what had motivated her to attempt such a dangerous solo expedition, investigators concluded that her death was the result of a medical emergency rather than foul play or accident. For Rebecca's family, the discovery provided the closure they had sought for over 2 decades. After years of uncertainty and hope that she might still be alive somewhere, they finally knew what had happened to their daughter and sister. Though the knowledge came with the definitive confirmation that she had died alone in the wilderness she loved. The Sterling family chose to leave Rebecca's remains in the Oregon forest where she had been found, recognizing that she had died while pursuing the work that had defined her life. A small memorial was established near the original trailhead she had used, serving both as a tribute to her artistic legacy and a reminder about wilderness safety for other photographers. The case became an important part of safety education programs for outdoor photographers and wilderness professionals. Rebecca's story illustrated how even experienced outdoors people could find themselves in life-threatening situations when working alone in remote locations, and how communication limitations could turn medical emergencies into tragedies. The Oregon Professional Photographers Association developed a comprehensive safety protocol directly influenced by Rebecca's case, requiring members working in wilderness areas to file detailed location plans and maintain regular communication schedules. These guidelines became a model for similar organizations throughout the Pacific Northwest and eventually influenced national photography safety standards. Photography schools throughout Oregon integrated Rebecca's story into their curriculum, using her case as a teaching example of how passion for artistic excellence must be balanced with practical safety considerations. Students learned about the importance of risk assessment, emergency communication, and the dangers of allowing artistic vision to override safety protocols. The Forest Service also modified their wilderness education programs to address the specific needs of photographers and other professionals who work alone in remote locations. New materials emphasize the particular risks faced by people carrying expensive equipment who might be tempted to reach extraordinary locations to capture unique images. Emergency communication technology companies began marketing satellite communication devices specifically to outdoor photographers, using Rebecca's case as an example of how traditional communication methods could fail in critical situations. These devices, while expensive in the early 2000s, gradually became standard equipment for professional nature photographers working in remote areas. Professional photography organizations throughout the Pacific Northwest incorporated lessons from Rebecca's case into their safety guidelines and training programs. New recommendations emphasized the importance of satellite communication devices, regular check-ins, and avoiding solo work in extremely remote locations without backup support. The recovered photographs from Rebecca's final expedition were eventually developed and printed by photography specialists working with her family and estate. The images, while damaged by time and weather, demonstrated the artistic vision and technical skill that had made Rebecca's reputation, showing forest scenes of extraordinary beauty captured with professional precision. Several of these final photographs were included in a posthumous exhibition of Rebecca's work, displayed alongside her earlier images to create a comprehensive retrospective of her artistic development. The exhibition traveled to galleries throughout Oregon and Washington, introducing new audiences to her unique vision of Pacific Northwest wilderness. The photography tripod found beside Rebecca's remains became a symbol of dedication to artistic vision, representing her commitment to capturing perfect images regardless of personal risk. The tripod was eventually donated to the University of Oregon Photography Program, where it serves as both a teaching tool and a memorial to Rebecca's passion for her craft. Today, the remote location where Rebecca Sterling was discovered remains largely unchanged from how she found it in 1987. The forest continues to display the seasonal beauty that attracted her there, though few photographers attempt to reach such difficult terrain without modern GPS equipment and satellite communication devices. Her story continues to resonate with photographers who understand the drive to capture perfect images and the risks inherent in pursuing art in wilderness settings. Rebecca's final photographs, showing forest scenes of haunting beauty, serve as a testament to her artistic vision and her willingness to go to extraordinary lengths to document the natural world. The case also highlights the evolution of wilderness safety technology and practices over the past several decades. The communication and navigation tools available in 1987 were significantly less sophisticated than those used by outdoor professionals today, and it's possible that Rebecca's death might have been prevented with contemporary emergency communication equipment. Modern photographers working in remote locations typically carry GPS devices satellite communicators, and other technology that makes solo wilderness work significantly safer than it was in the late 1980s. However, the basic challenges of working alone in remote terrain remain the same, and Rebecca's story continues to serve as an important reminder about respecting both the beauty and the danger of wilderness environments. The artistic legacy that Rebecca Sterling left behind continues to inspire new generations of nature photographers. Her images of Pacific Northwest forests, captured through patient observation and technical skill, remain powerful examples of how photography can reveal the hidden beauty of natural environments. In the end, Rebecca Sterling found a kind of immortality in the wilderness that had inspired her life's work, her story becoming part of the enduring legacy of Oregon's forests, and a reminder that the pursuit of artistic excellence sometimes requires ultimate sacrifice. Her final photographs, taken in the remote location where she died, stand as a testament to her dedication and a haunting record of beauty discovered in solitude.